Since the dawn of mankind, we've built shit. And now we're starting to build shit faster and faster. I'm going to read a little bit about this. Maybe we'll do some impromptu podcasting. This is James, who inspired some of the writing in here. And honestly, just watch all of it. This is important information, relevant to other information you're consuming, I promise you. Because unless you're a monk who only desires to have zero desires, then you have desired states about your future. This is just like goals, etc. Or aspirations, whatever ideas you have. Future you, what do you want to become? And then, depending on the level of how big of virtue you want to exist, or how grand or successful, you're going to have to take some actions to get there. We're entering an age where we need to take less actions. That's what technology really is at its core. It is a decreasing of the amount of effort needed to reach a desired state in the world. Now this trend is continuing, advancing faster and faster, because all advancements in this field help advance the creation of new advancements. We've got the iPhone in like 2008. That's not that long ago. But now a majority of the entire planet has smartphones. We're interconnected with supercomputers in our pocket that 50 years ago were the size of this entire building. This is a big building. And now they're stronger. So I think that's a really good way to look at it. We used to have the speed of a boat or a horse, maybe a pigeon if you were lucky, but still those pigeons were very indirect. Who knows if you were going to get your information over to the other side. Now it's like insane. It's the speed of light. So we've then taken all of that data, which we've all collectively uploaded to this internet we created, and then built machines which understand our language. So we've gone from sticks and stones to molecular biology, now breaching into nanoscience. And in the digital frontier, originally we used to program computers with literal ones and zeros. Programmers knew what binary code was or how it worked. Then we decided, okay, let's create programming languages to make this easier. Then a lot of people recently have been making no-code tools that make it just easier to program. And then the recent advent from OpenAI, what ChatGPT is it can just write code. You just prompt it with text. Now, it's not as good as a software engineer, but they're predicting that it'll be just as good as a software engineer in the next year or two, putting the most expensive job in existence today into the hands of any single person who can just spit out their ideas. That's crazy. We're in a time of insane craziness, and the reason why I want you to listen to this is because I think it's all time for us to go look at the crazy, to try to understand it, and then to kind of decide whether or not it's worth watching sports or just playing phone games or kind of just distracting ourselves with bullshit, especially in recognition of the fact that the bullshit's just going to get stronger and better. So I like to think of all technology as moving more and more sections of reality into this and towards the instant capability range. We can see that for images. Clearly, since we're doing it with images, since video is just a bunch of images, we're rapidly approaching doing that for video, which means putting the power of Hollywood into the hands of everyone. You're going to be able to make a movie, James. How does that feel?
Sounds good.
What would your movie be called?
Superhumanism.
I'm excited to watch it.
Nice. Me too.
And so I think that we're all basically getting more manifestation power. And that means we can all have larger and larger impacts if we just focus on having those impacts. It also means there's more capability to destroy ourselves or more of the world. And we're already seeing that with tech that is based on feeding us media, because we live in a world of capitalism, which right now, in different ways, is very unaligned to people. These are extraction mechanisms. So it says, you here, as a human, using this platform, what can I feed you that's just going to keep you on this platform all day? The goal is to keep you in bed all day, doing nothing, but arguing online on this platform. It just so happens that controversy is one of the biggest appeals towards people staying on a platform, or stuff which is just crazy because you're just like staring at it. Anything which inspires you and makes you leave is like, no, why would we show that? That decreases the overall user engagement. And so this is really bad. And it's only getting worse. And actually, the charts and graphs directly just show. These lines are not random lines. This is on suicide, self-poisoning, and major depressive episodes of young U.S. women. And then if we look at like people meeting up every day, we're way more interconnected where we've got social media, but really what that's doing is just hacking the part of our brain which wants interconnectedness, which wants connection, and it's giving us a cheap form of it, some fast food version. And these algorithms have the smartest engineers in the world, billions of dollars behind them. They're getting 10 to 20,000 data points at least on you in order to build a voodoo doll version of you, which it then just wants to extract your attention from. It does not care about you, it cares about you as a resource. So it's trying to script you and just take your attention. And to that degree, it is like a soul-sucking demon is honestly one of the best ways to describe what we've unleashed onto all of the youth of the world today. And so we're basically looking at that and we're saying, okay, we did that wrong already in this current paradigm. It looks like clearly the paradigm is just getting stronger. It's definitely time to focus on making a shift because, yes, while this is bad, while we're going down, we can also go up. We can use these AI systems to just maximize value for people. We can train models on different purposes. This hasn't been done with social media, and this is one of the things which I am very, 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 very into the idea of pushing and wanting more support in pushing, which is why I just recently filed this philanthropy, and this is one of the biggest cause areas. I have a finished application which sorts videos based on what gets people to exit the app. Basically, the idea is turning the device into a true device rather than device that it is today. You should be able to pick up your phone and get inspiration at any time. We should be good enough at doing that. That doesn't currently exist, which is very weird. Non-superhuman. See if I skipped anything here. Yeah, so I mean, one of the best ways to look at it is like we have godlike technology, we have medieval institutions, and we have ape-like minds. And so the cool thing about our ape-like minds, though, is that they're actually quite powerful. They're the thing which built the godlike technology. We can align this technology because the technology captures our will, and it does whatever our will is. The problem is that our will is very unenlightened in the degree that, the entire organizations of people who are pushing these stronger algorithms, they're kind of just a part of this bigger machine. Then they're not realizing that they're contributing towards just the extraction of all these other people. So that's one. And that's this unenlightened paradigm that we're in, which we're going to be able to more clearly recognize and move past as we do just get tons of surplus resources. Because right now a lot of people do it because they think it's like, oh, this is necessary for my survival, for my status, etc., etc. And, once we do have real surplus of financial wealth, which we already do. It's just not distributed well enough. The more and more people who recognize that, and it's happening, is that people are recognizing that. People are recognizing that we're on this path towards GDP exponential growth, and that means that money will never really be the limiter. The limiter is our then capability to go look towards what I'm calling enlightened capitalism, which is the idea that it's not money that's scarce, it's not power that's scarce, it's good karma that's scarce. If you believe that the future is good, if you believe we're heading towards a good future, or you want to head there, then you believe that the only scarce resource worth accumulating is good karma. Once we deplete all the good karma resources, let's call that building heaven or utopia. And that's obviously just a very abstracted, reductionist way to give that point out, but I think it's pretty good. So, back to the machine which we are creating. I think one of the easiest ways to understand how this takeoff is coming is that leverage and power in the world is also abstracting. So our capability to simply say, go do this, is happening before our eyes. One of the projects I'm working on right now allows us to basically turn the computer into Jarvis. So rather than just prompting and having, write me a blog, which you can do with ChatGPT, you can actually say, go post this blog on my website. And so these systems then are bringing more of an experience of literally just speech into manifesting a reality. As it gets closer and closer and better at having all the skills that a human has, and a human is really just a very general intelligence, then this is what people are calling the point of AGI. AGI is when computers are as generally good as humans. And at this point, since we could, as humans, build an entire city on Mars, once we have AGI, it would be as easy as saying, hey Siri, build me a city on Mars. And that's just... Okay. She transforms into the Transformer like this. My phone starts changing. I'm like, stop. That'd be great. And one of the ways that you can also think about this of reaching post scarcity is just like once you can create more capital or energy than you put in to the system, then boom, hey, can you create me 30 more solar panels? And then these solar panels capture more energy than they took to create. Now you just had a positive sum experience, and you can just repeat that, right? This is general intelligence, so it's anything a human can do. Humans are these surplus creating machines. That's what we're edging towards. That's this takeoff point. That's how we're going to reach this sort of post-scarcity society. And obviously a lot of questions come up. I'm not getting deep into the idea of how do we make sure that that's not just in the hands of one central power and we live in a world where it's totalitarianism. But that's obviously a really big and important subject, which I think the world will converge around making sure it doesn't happen. Maybe instead of AGI, we would have named this AHI, Artificial Human Intelligence, but Tuna Fish had already taken that acronym, so we did AGI. And moving forward from here, it's pretty clear that we don't want to reach the point where we can just have everything that we want instantaneously. I think there's lots of philosophical concepts, like there's one called The Monkey's Claw about this. There's a recent movie about this, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it's like we do want to reach a certain point which is just the best for us humans. Our goal is to just focus on making that happen, And that's what we're doing early in some sense, if you're watching this video, relative to the masses, who I think understand that that's what they will need to do or need to focus on and need to put any bit of effort towards. But that's sort of the war that we fight, is negligence, is this existential awareness of the future that is coming, and more people are going to look for answers and look for people in their community who actually have thought about these things and who have some semblance of ideas, who have already started these discussions. And that's why part of it is, appealing to your internal self of want to be correct or want to be on the frontier or want to talk about the things which are going to be talked about more. That's part of the reason why you should do this, is just because at the end of the day, it's inevitable that we start having more of these discussions, because it attacks our current way of human life and human society. Are you going to allow your partner to have an AI other partner, a spouse that can speak to it and always be there for it and gives it therapy? Where do you draw the line there? There's lots of interesting conversations that come up. So some of what comes up is definitely a lot of thinking in terms of religion or mythicalness. And part of what I've heard before from some Christian people is like, oh, well, God's going to take care of it. God's going to save us. This goes against the scripture in the Bible. We are meant to be God's workers, God's hands, eyes, and ears. And look, kids right now are committing suicide because they're getting distracted from this machine, and it's their young minds who don't know how to deal with the complete control over their reward system, which makes them depressed and unable to really devote themselves to the other things in life, when then they get bad grades and then they think they're a failure and then eventually kill themselves completely. So it's like, God's not saving those people. That's, I think, the best argument for look, just wake up to the fact that it is through us that the change happens, and then you'll be far better off for it. On this topic, I think what we have, I think the biggest problem that we have today is understanding these thoughts, listening to something like this, and then just actually trying to integrate it is very, very difficult. It's very hard. It's very hard to live by these ideas. And this is where me and James had a lot of shared feeling and conversation. Is we both want to embody it more. And we sort of both agreed on, and trying to kind of predict this number was out of 10,000 people. I did an experiment, actually. I haven't told you about this experiment, but I went on Snapchat. Snapchat is where I have a lot of normie friends. And normie is this term that is really popular in San Francisco, particularly, I think, because San Francisco is very, very heady and intellectual and always on the frontier, to sort of just describe the masses. Just the average way that someone thinks, because SF tends to be on the frontier. It's like, they've created a word for the normie mindset. And I'd done a similar question around 5 years ago when I was thinking about this stuff, and it was like, when do you think AGI comes, or the singularity comes? And before, I either used to get, what's the singularity, or 200 years was like the average response. And now I just did it. I had only 1 in 10 people say, what's the singularity? And the average guess was around 15 years, which was very, very surprising to me.
It is surprising.
I did not know that the so-called normies have woken up.
Well, not embodied, though. Yeah.
completely unembodied.
Yeah.
And so this is what we realized. This is where we're like, oh, Lord, have mercy. 10,000 people, in a room of 10,000 people, of who would answer an average of 15 years. Those who are either a decade or saying 2 decades away, say it, believe it, have a lot of evidence that they could back it up with, and there's the smartest people in the world who would likely predict less than them. For example, Musk is predicting 6 years. Well, how many people are really embodying and living by that? Who are understanding what then that future looks like, and then living in the present in recognition of that future which is unfolding. Because it changes a lot of the way of how you look at the world. It makes taking like a 30-year loan a life hack, because you'll never even really need to pay that back, or money just will be in surplus. It makes the idea of playing video games or watching sports at the brink of the biggest moment in human history seem really silly, and it makes even thinking to yourself on 30-year investment timelines as also silly. It's like, well, I don't want to return then. What actually matters to me? What should I spend my capital or my resources on? What should I spend my time doing? And even as someone like myself who can attest to this, it's very difficult for me to stay in this mindset too, even though I'm thinking about this all the time. Society and culture are something which has a great difficulty in keeping up with this. Everyone has a difficulty keeping up with this because the world's just starting to move faster than we can understand. And this is a thought experiment I used to think about 5 years ago, which was if you teleported someone from the year 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC, they'd be like, oh, we have like a new metal or something, and it would be fine. So you could go 5,000 years in the future. You could take someone from 100,000 BC and go to 50,000 BC, and maybe they're like, oh, there's new types of dwellings now. That's pretty cool. Now we have, I don't know when irrigation was really made, but these types of advancements which are very small. But now if you take someone from the year 2000 and put them into today's world, it's vastly different. And now 5 years ago, things are vastly different. And the next 5 years, the craziest thing to take into account on these facets is that the world doesn't work in terms of linear progression. It is truly exponential. So it's really easy to extrapolate and say, yeah, 20 years ago, we didn't have the iPhone. Now everyone in the world has a smartphone. 20 years from now, maybe we all have AR glasses. But that's not even close. It is an exponential change. So it's more like try to add 300 years of change, which is what we'll experience. 300 years of the rate of change of the past 20 years is how this exponential function works. And I think that makes it easier to then think of how crazy it's going to be. Because when anyone thinks of 300 years in the future, you're more like, oh, wow, things are moving quick. So how do we embody it? Well, this is why both me and James have this big push towards community, towards living in an environment with people who think the same way, because that is really what shapes you, what shapes your mindset, etc., is the people who you're around, the energy you're around, their mindsets. It's all rubbing off of each other. It's all bouncing off in different ways, like mirrors if you're with the right people. Your energy should bounce off and then grow, and then be total positive sum creation. So that's why we're both on this wave of setting up stuff which is in and around this space and he currently has a 52-bedroom co-living space, which he's like, okay, let's start filling it with more mirrors and people who are really thinking hard about this and embodying it, so we can create an embodied community. Let's tell that story. Let's craft a lot of change, and let's show what it looks like to be an embodied community, because that's also going to attract more people who want to become embodied. We can create systems for, elevating everyone's capabilities. There's lots of ecosystem effects that happen here. I'm personally excited by doing media and stuff like this, so storytelling, because an embodied community can really inform the world. It's a large group of people sharing their intelligence, sharing a story of living by these ideals and building great things that, where not a lot of the world is even ready to embody this stuff. The main way that people can embody it is just changing what they consume. And so they might switch over from, rather than watching sports, we're going to watch these YouTube videos and these media that is being output by this community, because people really do like to just keep up to date on the future, to watch the future happen. And that's one way to stay informed and to at least be a node of wisdom. And that's really what the world needs, is if we have a very wise world, and if we align our algorithms to spread wisdom and not controversy, to spread unity and not try to focus on duality, then I think that's the best path we can have for the future. There's funnily enough, the biggest problem that a lot of people looking at this future have aligned on is called AI alignment. It's this idea that whatever we create, an advanced intelligence's goal will potentially not align with humans. And what's really silly to me is the way that they've gone about this is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on doing theoretical research of how potentially they could align that thing in the future. Not kind of taking into account how it's really just up to OpenAI to actually figure out how they want to control their own machine. If this research is not happening at these main AGI labs, the chances of it actually getting put into the models is just actually a risk for them. And it's such a lack of focus on the world as an organism and as systems thinking. It's trying to solve and just find some magic key, but the magic key, it doesn't exist and it's never existed. The magic key is just thinking about the world as an organism and recognizing that when you empower the organism, you give the organism the best chance of living. It's kind of like if we have an infection, rather than just trying to destroy or cut off the entire leg, the idea is that we should just use antibiotics and start fixing and patching up the infection, and then remove it from the body through those means. And that means aligning AI today. AI is already misaligned. It's already soul-sucking and extracting, and we actually can just directly focus on fixing that. And if we had spent hundreds of millions of dollars towards that, things would have been well off. But we actually don't need to spend hundreds of millions. Anyways, we can strategically spend far less money and to start a cultural movement. And really now just the next step for that is to advertise this platform, which I input all my own funds to build a team to build over the past year. So, I do like speaking to the religious mindsets that exist in the world. I think there's lots of truth in prophecy, and one of those statements that I'll think about personally is okay, there's lots of stories and there's lots of reasoning to kind of believe in rebirth. Like, okay, even if we die, eventually all our material will come back together in some conscious form, and that's great, and maybe we've already done that a lot. Well, what if we have, but the only reason we leave is because we make the choice to? Maybe we were not satisfied with the fact that we didn't become the best version of ourselves when we had the chance. I like this idea because it really puts a piece of pressure on the idea of truly focusing on devoting yourself towards the highest power you can imagine. And in this case, it's just like servicing the whole, which I think is a representation of God. It's like when you service God, when you act for God, you just act to serve the whole. And then I like this idea of like Judgment Day and this so-called Singularity Day, the day we create AGI. What if that sort of represents heaven or hell, just in the sense that heaven is an eternal state of fulfillment where you're like, yes, I devoted myself, I helped open heaven's gate, I was there for people, I saved people. And the other side was like, you were one of the sick few who couldn't defeat your inner demons, and even though the world advances and creates a beautiful world, you were not a part of that. You got saved, and I do hope, and I would say that, you know, we will be able just to provide the most advanced therapy to these people who struggled and had a hard time. But I think it's positive and speaks to the better side of people to kind of think about or fear eternal regret. I think fear of God is a good thing. And so a lot of these concepts that I talk about, a lot of it is just the belief that these are strong and positive beliefs and not necessarily claims on exactly how the future is going to be or the future unfolds. But in terms of the mindset of excitement about the future, of which side will win, are we going to kill ourselves off? I am very much so on the side that this techno-capital machine becomes enlightened and recognizes that power is not the scarce resource that should be accumulated, but good karma is. And once that really happens, then we start using all of this power that we do have to empower the entire world. And, you know, this is a new golden age, a new age of enlightenment. And I sort of see my own role here, and everyone's role is just trying to make that transition as smooth as possible, or at least positioning yourself on the side which recognizes that you're in this holy war and then chooses to fight for the highest power you can imagine, to fight for the whole, to fight for everyone, to fight for love, to fight for the people you love, etc. So if you're out there and you truly feel like you just want to go after this mission, even if you don't feel, if you aren't going after your mission because you don't feel comfortable like quitting your job because you're like, I won't have enough income, that can be solved. That is something which any person who has great projects that they want to work on and just needs that sort of extra boost. We have an India chapter where it is literally $400 to $600 per person to give you a maid, a chef, food, and living out there. Like, that includes a steam room, a sauna, a gym. I was just out there for 6 months. So we're building a society out there. And then there's the more expensive one. This isn't one that we are necessarily ready to completely fund, but maybe if you have the right projects, we can talk to people and ask them to fund it. Hopefully, my charity that I recently just filed, I find mechanisms to fund it. If you're not someone who's like young and looking to take on big projects, but maybe you have real estate and you're like, also agree that good karma is the only scarce resource, then maybe you're like, okay, well, I should sell my house, or you can do this leaseback style deal. I can have this pocket of cash. I can support this dude whose ideas I believe in. or the people who are just a part of this growing movement, and I can make change happen that way. If there's a will, there's a way. And together, we're going to have a great day. So come with me, and let's bring heaven through play. The world's our stage, and this is James, a holy sage.
I don't know if that continued the run.
And now that is the end of this page.
Nice.
Cheers. I just finished this video and then James started spitting some fire. Also, I want to show something real quick. I did not make this title. I did not make this summary. I did not choose these chapters. This was done automatically by AI on my computer. Anyways, James. James was spitting on, like, just, obviously, I think my speech imbued your sense of awareness with how the world is just very unaware of these topics, and especially missing role models is where I've seen, and where I've then been really empowered by the idea of, like, oh, all the stuff I'm thinking about and trying to build, people are going to really care about it. And just like placing yourself in the sector of what ideas will become very, very important that people will converge around. Place yourself somewhere there, and not only is that the right thing to do, very valuable, but it fits that egoic want or will to kind of do life correctly. But what were you going to say?
Oh yeah, just like, I mean, I've seen a bunch of people on tech Twitter say this over the years, but yeah, I think that humans are just really bad at not only embodying, but just in general understanding exponential progress in technology and just in general. And so yeah, they're very bad at this. You know, I saw this interview a couple weeks ago with Netanyahu and Lex Friedman, and that was sort of Netanyahu's main point, is that, yeah, just humans are really bad at doing this, which I totally agree with. And yeah, so the best way that I can convey to, you know, like my mom or my grandma or something about like what I think is ahead of us in the next 1 to 2 decades, probably closer to 1 decade, I'm gonna sneeze, is like, if you think about all the change, damn it, like right on the brink of a sneeze. But if you think about all the change that happened over the last like 2 centuries, and I think it's really helpful to visualize it. It's like, if you think 200 years ago, we have like old Western towns that have like, you know, dirt roads and horse and buggy, and like there's not even like electricity yet. And then all of a sudden it's like, wham, we're like in the world that we live in today. And there's like modern infrastructure and cars and planes and electricity and, you know, all these legal and political systems and your phone and the internet and yada yada, right? So like, think about like that amount of change being the default for what happens like year after year, like 10 years from now. Like that's the kind of world, that's the rate of change that you should be expecting. And that's like the beginning. And then instead of it being year over year, it's like month over month and then week over week. I mean, that's like sort of unrestrained AI progress. And I'm not saying restrain it, but like that's what it looks like. And I think that is like the default for unrestrained AI progress within like a 10-year time frame, 20 tops. Yeah, and so like for people who like don't really get it, think of that visual and that amount of change over that increment of time, and it just keeps compounding. And so, you know, when I say this to people, they're like, "Oh yeah, wow, you know, oh, you know, you hit them with the logical arguments and Moore's law and how much faster progress in AI is happening than anyone thought even, you know, 5 years ago." And they're like, "Oh yeah," but then they're like, "Well, I got to save for retirement. You know, I got my career. It's like, listen, All of that shit is gone. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, do you understand that? It's like there is no planning. There is no retirement account. There is no 20, 30-year career. That stuff, there is no job. There is no money. It's like, what are you talking about?
No money
It doesn't
sense
matter anymore.
Because there's so much money.
So this
No
is
need
where I
for
kind of lose
standard
it. It's like
currency.
they don't get it because they keep talking about all this shit as if like it's still going to be there when it's absolutely not going to be.
Yeah.
So
And the biggest thing that the world lacks today is definitely role models. Definitely people within their community who are like taking this seriously and then being voices for your local community of how to think about this. I think the clear understanding that I've come to is like, yes, we're going to have all of this GDP growth. Yes, there is groups and organizations who are going to try to control all of that, who don't have the mindset that the world should be the most empowered, but that the world would be best off if these groups are the most empowered and they have all the control, and they rationalize that through kind of thinking we are far smarter than the world.
yeah, definitely don't do that.
That is the wrong mindset.
That is a very
That
bad
is
idea.
an embodiment of the Antichrist. That is the holy war that will be fought, is against these institutions who historically, where a lot of the power exists in the world, sadly, is in these mindsets, because these mindsets tend to accumulate more power than the mindsets who understand that giving power away is the better model. Now, what that means is that we need to build the narrative of the anti-empire. And that means we need to create the anti-empire empire. It does need a wedge. It does need a forward-thinking group who kind of charges at the future and says, look, here's our vision, here's our plan, and we're just going to keep building shit and keep adding more people to this vision and plan, and we're just going to keep absolutely growth hacking and gaining attention and gaining leverage towards going after it. And I don't see that today, and I'm very surprised that I don't see that today. And I think what that means is that we gotta fucking do it. And at the very least, there likely will be multiple wedges. The beautiful thing about these wedges who truly have the right heart or the right vision is that they'll be very down to just coagulate and say, look, we're wedging the same goal. Let's wedge together. We're here fighting the same fight. We're in this together. We're on the same team. And at the end of the day, the world has always known that if the world comes together, we can unify and defeat corruption. We've really just never had the technology stack in order to do that, in order to have large-scale governance protocols. But at the end of the day, the technology exists today. The solutions exist today. They just need a voice. There are very smart people, so many very smart people, who are thinking about these problems, who are working on these problems. Typically, they tend to just be less media-focused. So it's like we're just lacking it in the media. This media is also has a requirement of like mature people who are actually like, wait, this is worth listening to, even though this is less fun to listen to. My goal is not fun. My goal is being informed and supporting positive missions and narratives because I'm a part of this great fight. And so from that perspective, one, that's just going to be more and more of people's perspective as they do get this existential awareness, which can be seen as an existential crisis. But I think existential crises are actually one of the most positive things for people's lives, because really what it is taking a step back and saying, why am I here? What am I doing? What's the purpose? What should I be doing? And that's always a good questions to ask yourself.
Yep.
I recommend watching the movie Don't Look Up, looking at that and understanding that as a metaphor for AI. And at the end of the day, we're running this movie together. So let's make it great. Aye, aye.
Oh, yeah.